The opinions and statements expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of WWDB, its staff, or management.
Good day, everybody. Welcome again to another edition of Boomer Generation Radio. This is your host, Richard Address, coming to you from the studios of WWDB in Philadelphia, WWDB AM 860, and Boomer Generation Radio streaming live on WWDBAM.com. And again, a reminder that if you want to contact the show with some ideas or suggestions or concerns, email us at boomergenerationradio@gmail.com. That's boomergenerationradio@gmail.com. This portion of Boomer Generation Radio is brought to you by Kendal, a system of not-for-profit communities and services located in 8 states in the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and near Midwest regions of the United States. Kendal advocates for and empowers older adults to reach their full potential and is committed to working with others to together transform the experience of aging. To learn more about Kendal, that's Kendal, we invite you to visit kendal.org or call them toll-free at 888-759-0128. And to welcome you welcome to the Boomer Generation Radio microphones on the Kendal segment of Boomer Generation Radio. From the Action Mill, which I have to find out what that is, Robert Piegler and Jethro, Heiko. Welcome to Boomer Generation Radio, and thank you for coming into the studio. We welcome you. I guess the first question, obviously, is the Action Mill. This is not like a restaurant, the stuff in Bucks County, correct?
No, it's not. And this is Jethro. No, we're a design firm, and we focus on the design of tools and products and services that support organizations and people to make better decisions and have better communication about late life and end of life care.
So you're partners in this. What got you to start something to? Of all the things, you could probably wind up doing, you created a company that helps people make decisions about dying?
Well, Jeff, this is Rob. Jethro and I are 2 of the 3 partners. Our other partner, Jehlen, isn't here today. We've been making tools to help people have difficult conversations for years now, and we just kind of have been upping the ante, and what could be more important than understanding what your values are, what the implications are for the choices you make in your day-to-day life. And when you think about getting towards the end of your life, it just ups the ante and makes it, even more clear whether or not you're living your values.
So you have this company, you develop tools for people to have conversations, I guess, on an individual level and on other levels too. So you have before you, I'm looking at these cards. You guys created this thing called My Gift of Grace. It's a card game, a card game like, I guess whatever, a kid's game to help people have conversations about dying. Is that a misstatement, or is that correct?
That's it's close. I mean, it's called My Gift of Grace, a conversation game for living and dying well. And it's a game that includes cards, question cards. There's actually 47 questions, and they're prompts for people to have conversations that they often avoid. It helps people start the conversation with friends, family, or strangers, and help them practice this conversation about what's important to you, no matter what stage of life you're in. So it's really for anyone to get practice at talking about what's important to them and how that informs the way they think about death and dying and living well until that point in which you die.
Okay, so Rob, why this? I mean, and how did this idea come to be? I mean, you guys sitting around one day at a Dunkin' Donuts saying, let's create a card game to help people talk about dying.
Well, we consider ourselves human-centered designers, which means we pay very close attention to people and their needs and hopes and fears and the specific context of their lives. So we talked to end-of-life professionals and heard from them that, if people just had one conversation with their families before they showed up here, we could be so much more helpful to them. So we were thinking about, okay, so your average person in a family, not necessarily with the imminent end-of-life issue. How could you help these people have these conversations and practice having these conversations? And then thinking about context, we thought, okay, well, games, when families get together and you play Monopoly or charades or something else, you're gathering and having conversations.
So this is designed for like when the family's sitting down for Thanksgiving dinner.
Exactly.
After the pie is served and everybody says, well, what are we going to do now? You whip out the My Gift of Grace card game, and is that, I mean, I'm without being too facetious, that's really part of the design, right?
Yeah. And I think it might be helpful to share like an example of a question. So in healthcare, there's a lot of talk about advanced directives and having and choosing your proxy, which is someone to provide decisions for you in the case that in the event that you're not able to make decisions on your behalf.
Correct.
So one question that we have, question 22, that gets at that in an interesting way is, imagine you were lost at sea and your family had to pay for the search to find you. Who should make decisions about how long to search for you? So it gets at questions about who you trust and who should make decisions without it being something that is very healthcare focused.
Okay, so there are how many questions?
There's 47.
47 questions, and I guess there's an instruction.
Yeah, there's instructions. There's also thank you chips, which are...
Is that what those little blue...
Yeah.
There's two little blue chips sitting on the counter here in the studio, and what do those chips do?
So every player, it's a conversation game. So normally games have 3 to 6, 8 players, and the chips are used during the game. When you hear or someone does something that you're grateful for, you provide a thank you chip for them. Mm-hmm. So it's a way of kind of creating kind of a gratitude flow, which helps people stay in the game.
Now, I know that this is part of, in all seriousness, part of a growing national movement to have what is called the conversation. And we've had, at Boomer Generation Radio in the last year, we had Nathan Kotkamp, who's the creator of National Healthcare Decision Day. He was on last year, and one of the people who is in charge of the Conversation Project out of Boston, they were on, I think in March or February, if I'm not mistaken, to talk about the Conversation Project. We've talked about this a lot, and I know in synagogues, churches, groups, this is becoming more and more of an issue as boomers age and deal with their own parents. And then in the privacy of those hospital rooms sometimes say, well, wait a minute, is this me in 25 or 30 years? And if so, I'm really scared to death about this. What am I going to do about this? So this is part of this growing conversation. How do you market this? How does somebody get a hold of this project?
So they can go to our website, which is mygiftofgrace.com, and purchase the game. It's $24.95 for one game, and if you buy more than one, it's $19.95 each. We also have a lot of game events and game nights. So we've had over 35 game nights across the country.
Really?
And these are actually public events or private, where on our website we provide a toolkit for people to hold a game event, and then you get a discount for buying games if you register your event with us. And we've even played recently at Reading Terminal Market. In fact, the general manager of the market joined us, and we had about 12, 15 people, some of whom knew each other, some of whom met for the first time, play the game in public. It went quite well. We also have an event in and for Bucks County, hosted by Chandler Hall, which is a Kendal Corporation affiliate member, and that's on June 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. And it's an event like any other game event where people can show up and actually have quite a bit of fun. I actually recently played at Cherry Hill with Samaritan Healthcare and Hospice with their volunteers. And what was surprising was that there was so much laughter that people actually asked us to quiet down. So it's surprisingly fun to play, in part because you get at what's important to people, and people get to tell stories about things that are actually quite enjoyable to talk about, but that often we avoid talking about.
Yeah, I imagine in using this technique, you sort of like demystify the whole. I mean, it's like the Death Cafe thing that's now starting up all over the country. Part of this, I would imagine, then, is to demystify this whole concept of talking about one's own death. And if somebody wants to get a hold of this, they go on your website. How else do they make contact with the Action Mill? You're located here in Philadelphia, right?
Yeah, we're located in the edge of Chinatown, Center City.
Okay.
Vine Street.
So if somebody wants to get a hold of you to talk about this or to order this, other than the phone calls, websites, how do they do that?
Well, if they want to contact us about our main business consulting company, www.actionmill.com is it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, actionmill.com is a place to reach us and find out more about our work.
Okay. And is there a phone number that somebody can they call to order one of these things, or is everything done on the web?
Currently, we're doing orders online.
Okay. So your company, I want to come back to this because this is fascinating to me. You market yourselves as designers, idea designers. What would be the appropriate term?
Human-centered design strategy firm. So my gift of grace is a specific solution to a specific problem. We were imagining just, again, families. Maybe there's not an imminent end-of-life issue, and we're imagining, okay, so who's the cruise director, the person who brings families together, maybe the person who's focused on caretaking, usually a female member of the family. So that's who we imagine this game for. And it's turned out to work very well that way. Families play it. My family made me play it. I didn't want to push it on them. I enjoy playing it, but I didn't want to push it on them. We spent 2.5 hours at Thanksgiving playing the game.
Really?
Oh, yeah. If people don't have a time limit, they tend to go like an hour and a half or 2 hours. You can keep it down to like 25 minutes, but it goes on. So this is a specific solution, and we found that people in the end-of-life, late-life fields have found this very useful in a professional context for professional development, training, working with residents, patients, and families. We also work with clients directly and use the challenges that they have to focus us and develop specific solutions for them that have nothing to do with the game.
So what other human-centered programs have you designed and developed other than the card game?
So a few years back, actually, before we entered this late life, end of life space, we actually designed a game that we're increasingly seeing as very useful in this area, which is it's a decision making game. Not all our tools are games, but it was a really great project that we actually use internally and we've used with clients, and it's a game that kind of unpacks what a decision really is all about, which relates to who has the authority, what are your values, what level of investment you have,
power,
and also what kind of decision making. Is it a consensus decision? Is it a decision that one person's going to make, but they want to consult with others? So it's a way of, oftentimes our work is about taking things that are often taken for granted, like decisions, and getting underneath what's really going on in a way that people can interact and collaborate more effectively together.
So businesses would use this?
Yeah. We do a lot of work. We find that our work is really useful in teams of people, sometimes teams across disciplines within an institution, because they often have a lot of communication challenges.
So how long did it take you to design My Gift of Grace?
So My Gift of Grace was a response to a design challenge, which we won by the California Healthcare Foundation. I think the first prototype took us days, maybe weeks, and then that was last May that we won the challenge, and then we spent the summer doing a Kickstarter campaign in the month of July where we raised $41,000 from over 400 backers, and then from about August 1st until probably October, probably 3 months of very intense testing with hundreds of people, dozens of different groups and families playing, and then we released it in December as a product.
So in other words, this thing just really didn't emerge out of the clear blue. This was a response to a challenge from California.
Yeah, and it's frequently how we work. We were interested in at late life, end of life, and did a lot of interviews and shadowing people, and we thought, like, okay, we're learning a lot about this area, but the way to really understand what's going on and really deepen our relationships is to do something specific and useful. So we went from that and we looked for an opportunity to design something, a concrete, specific thing, and through that design process, that our testers were families who were getting together to talk about their end-of-life plans anyway, hospice nurses and other people in end-of-life work. So We got a specific tool that people found very useful out of this. We built a network of supporters who are excited and invested in improving this. Our business is there's a business part of our business. We want to design useful things that people buy, but there's also kind of a social movement aspect of this also. Like, we really want to help improve how people live and how people end their lives. So we do both of those simultaneously as part of kind of designing and organizing at the same time.
We're talking with Robert Pegler and Jethro Heiko, two of the partners from Action Mill here in the Delaware Valley, here on Boomer Generation Radio on WWDB AM 860. This portion of Boomer Generation Radio is brought to you by Kendal Outreach, serving the field of aging by raising public awareness and advocacy around important issues of older adults. Through education, training, and implementation of comprehensive approaches to safe, individualized, long-term care practices, Kendal Outreach has been sharing Kendal's approach to quality care with consumers, advocates, providers, government agencies, and related organizations since 1989. And to learn more, visit kendal.org. That's KENDAL.org, and click on Outreach. That's Kendal Outreach, KENDAL.org, and click on the Outreach icon. And before we get back to Jethro and Rob to talk about this very, very interesting card game, we have somebody on the line. Hello? Hello? I hope we have somebody on the line. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello? I guess not. Okay. Let me go back to, it's my technology challenged life. Okay, do we have them? Okay, let's try it again. Do we have somebody on the line?
Yes, hi.
Hi, who's this?
This is Carol Paprocki calling from Samaritan Healthcare and Hospice.
Okay, hi, welcome to Boomer Generation Radio, and talk to me a little bit. You're calling about?
I'm calling to comment on the Action Mill segment. As was
They're right here with us, right here now.
Yes, and I just wanted to say that that Samaritan is one of those organizations that really has been jumping on that trend across the country to really try to foster conversations in our own community in South Jersey. And we have been so grateful to the work that the Action Mill has provided, because we really have found My Gift of Grace to be a wonderful tool. As you noted, it seems almost irreverent to say, well, we're going to play a game, but we've been doing this with our staff, with our volunteers, as Jethro mentioned, and in fact have another event tomorrow, on Thursday, on May 8th, where Rabbi Address and Jethro will be featured speakers. And we really have found, as Jethro said, that, people come into it very tentatively, almost unwillingly, and then find themselves really engrossed in these conversations. So it has proven to be a wonderful tool.
Thank you. And that when is that program? It's Thursday night at McCourt Shalom at what time?
It's Thursday morning from
Thursday
10
morning.
to noon. And it's going to be on timely conversations. And the game won't actually be played that day, but questions from the game will be used, as well as an overview by you, Rabbi. And so we are looking forward to that, and we invite members of the community, if they are willing and want to learn more about this topic, to be able to come to that event.
It's Thursday morning. I made a mistake. Thursday morning at 10 o'clock at Congregational McCourt Shalom.
That's correct.
850 East Evesham Road in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Thanks a lot for calling in and participating in this conversation about this very, very interesting. And you said you played it with the staff at Samaritan?
We opened it out to our staff, and it wasn't mandatory. And we had, over 20 staff members show up. And again, the laughter that ran through the room. And I don't want to say that people weren't taking it seriously, but it was just that when people really started to do these questions with one another, it was fascinating. People that I've worked with for many, many years, learned a different side, and I found myself, being forced to confront some of the questions. It's things, that, as Jethro said, that, were put in a different way that really forced you to really think and see where you stand on something. So it proved to be a very, very fruitful endeavor, and our staff, a couple of staff members that I sort of dragged in unwillingly, come on in and play, and left praising it, So it's been a very worthwhile endeavor. And then the public event that we had at the Cherry Hill Library, same kind of thing. People of all ages, and found it to be a very useful way of framing their thoughts, and perhaps as an opening icebreaker perhaps with their family. So I encourage people to take a look at the site and really get involved, because as we've been trying to say to the community, these are conversations that you need to have at the kitchen table, not in the ICU. And tools like this really do help to frame that.
Okay, thank you. Thursday morning, Congregation McCourt Shalom. It's open to the public. Anybody can come. 10 p.m. 10 a. Boy, for some reason I have something that's going on Thursday night because I'm fixated. The Phillies aren't losing, so yet. 10 a.m. to noon. 10 a.m. to noon. Congregation McCourt Shalom for this program with the Action Mill and my Gift of Grace card game. So that's 10 a.m. to noon. Congregation McCourt Shalom Thursday, the 8th of May. Thank you very much for calling in. Say hello to Samaritan for us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I wanted to also just thank Carol and Samaritan. They've been great partners and clients, and we're just having a great time working with them.
Have other hospice organizations contacted you about the game?
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a hospice in New York State that bought one game for every staff member as a gift.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's been hospices all over the country right now are learning about it, and some are playing it with volunteers, with their staff. We often encourage staff to play first as a way to learn more about the game, as well as how, to begin a conversation with the staff about how they can improve and use the game in their work day to day.
One of the it just occurred to me while you're talking about this, one of the groups that I think would be, and I don't know whether you've reached out to this group because there's national organizations, the chaplains. There are national organizations of hospital chaplains, and chaplains are so important. They're really frontline people engaged with families. Have you been in touch with the chaplains group?
In early on during our testing, we had a room full of chaplains play at a local hospital, and they were great and like our toughest crowd. Like at first, they were many of them were not amused at the idea that it was a game, but once they played, the room again was full of conversation and laughter and thank you chips flying around.
Yeah, I want to imagine that would have been very interesting because, as I said, this group is really, as the chaplaincy itself becomes more professional and serious, taken quite serious. And I know from my teaching in our seminary, there's an increasing number of colleagues who are going into chaplaincy and really see it as really sacred work, that they would probably gravitate to this as a tool, as a real tool.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to share a bit about my experience because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what these conversations are, and sometimes we make it very heavy by talking about it like within a.
But it seems there are a lot of people laughing, and every time somebody talks about it, there are people laughing.
Yeah,
which is good. I mean, humor is great.
Yeah, and I think humor is also something that helps you to keep things from being too heavy. And so you've made it this kind of conversation, which is really about living, which I think, from whether it's a religious or non-religious tradition, that's the kind of conversation that people want to have. And when I was 20, my father was diagnosed with stomach cancer. It was terminal. And, for 5 months, I had this opportunity to either run away out of fear or be meaningfully involved in his care. And I decided to be meaningfully involved in his care. And that experience of bathing him, of taking care of him, and talking with him was so transformative. And even though there was heavy conversations in it, there was a lot of beautiful times with him. And my experience with my father in that last part of his life and the work I did since in bereavement, it changed the way I think about these conversations. And it was what I was bringing to my part, because everyone in the action mill participated in the design of the game. What I brought was this perspective that these conversations aren't what people think they are. They can be transformative. They can have humor. So I went into the design process thinking, can I give people just a little bit of that experience of the kind of conversations I had with my father without the need for someone to be terminally ill?
So we've talked a little bit about this game being played by people, by chaplains, by hospice staff people, by groups of people. But you mentioned something. Have you guys played this with people who are terminally ill? Is it applicable to somebody who is on those last stages of life as a message, as a means of reflection or legacy or taking a life review?
During the design of this game, there's a woman who moved back to Philadelphia to be with her mom, who was dying of brain cancer, and she wanted to play with her mom, but she wanted to get familiar with the game first. So I played the game with her, and then she went and played with her mom and her family. So I haven't played directly with somebody in late stages, but we've heard stories, yeah.
And I think also it's particularly useful, I think, even if, potentially got terminally ill or a person may or may not be even able to play, given what stage they're in. But my sense is that caregivers playing could be really useful as a way of getting, grounded and to build a sense of trust and collaboration of caregivers, would, at a time when families are often under a tremendous amount of stress.
I would imagine that over the course of the years, if you monitor this, you're going to pick up a variety of very, very powerful stories as people engage in the game, My Gift of Grace. And I don't know whether it's plans to collect any of these stories, but I would imagine that it would be very, very powerful and helpful to other people to see how this conversation can get started through a means that, as you were saying, is not necessarily what we would think of the catalyst. So
we're looking to do that formally, but already there's kind of a culture around it that's happening. If you play more than once, you have memories of like your good answer or a point where you learned something new from somebody else, and you share that with people you're playing the game with. So when you play with strangers and friends, you end up spreading that stuff around.
So before we run out of time, we only have a couple of minutes left. Rob, Jethro, walk us through again how someone or some organization who wants to pursue My Gift of Grace gets a hold of it and contacts the Action Mill, you guys.
Sure. So to learn more and buy the game, you go to mygiftofgrace.com, and it walks you through it, very simple steps. To learn more about the Action Mill, it's actionmill.com. And if people are interested in talking with me about the work we do as the Action Mill, my phone number is 267-984-3493.
All right, give us that one more time real fast.
mygiftofgrace.com, actionmill.com, and my phone number 267-984-3493.
We have 1 minute. I want just the one lesson from playing this game with hundreds of people around the area, and what's the one takeaway from that you have from this?
This is Rob. I played recently with some folks who are in late life and end of life care, and it's generally transformative, but I learned some things about parents and children that you'd think I'd know, but I didn't.
Thank you very much. Rob Hegler and Jethro Heiko, partners in the Action Mill here in Greater Philadelphia, and My Gift of Grace card game to have the conversation about end-of-life care, mygiftofgrace.com. Thank you, and a reminder that this portion of Boomer Generation Radio has been brought to you by Kendal, the system of not-for-profit communities here on the East Coast, kendal.org. Thank you very much. See you all next week.